wherever you are in the world. Could be good morning, could be a good evening, but it's a lovely good afternoon in Harare. It was raining yesterday, so the weather was chilly.
Cool.
Yeah. I had a good night's sleep because the weather is just right. This morning was also lovely, so I don't know whether it's an indication of what winter is going to be like.
I guess it's the beginning of winter.
Yeah. It started in early winter.
It's in early winter.
Okay. But fantastic. It's going to be a great show. We've got lots to share with you, something that a lot of people have been asking about. So this show is really on the back of demand from you guys and what you want us to discuss. So I'm really looking forward to it. We still have Visa in the house. Vincent, thank you very much for sponsoring the show. Thank you very much for coming. Dimu Mtengi.
And thanks for having me in the bar. Like you said, I like the company.
Yeah, fantastic. Good. And thank you very much for these are the t-shirts. They're lovely. Well, golf shirts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You actually look nice in them.
I think so. You know that blue is my color. Like it's just lovely on my skin.
Okay. And not the white with the
Tonight.
George, what's your problem? You don't have shit. But okay, what we're gonna do is
please don't encourage him, please.
All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna introduce everybody that's actually on set. We're gonna talk about property and the full gamut of property management. So from your household, residential, right through to office, and I think we've got the right people to actually talk about property, whether it's an investment, whether you're a tenant, everything around it. But before we do that, we're just going to go around the room and introduce yourself. So we'll start with the lovely lady here.
Okay. My name is Loveline Zigora. I'm the managing director for Home Pros Realty. So basically, I'm a realtor.
Fantastic. What's a realtor?
Okay, a realtor is a...
We don't have the 6-year-old on set.
Okay, so a realtor is basically a real estate agent.
All right. Okay. All right. So you buy and sell on behalf of clients.
We buy and sell on behalf of clients, but now it's now broader. We also do valuations, and we also get into land development as well and auctioneering.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, lovely. So, Gibson.
Yeah, so my name is Gibson Mapfidza. I work with Loveline in terms of the industry. I'm with Mashonaland Holdings. I think we do exactly like what they do, but we own a portfolio. So we manage, we call it an investment portfolio. We own buildings, list them out, but we also do development quite like what they do for sale or for retention. We also do valuations, project management, etc.
Okay. For a lot of our audience who are still in high school, yes, I know we do have high schoolers who actually watch the show. Why should they choose a career in property?
I think it's exciting, to be honest. When you look at property, it has various segments. Like she says, property development. So you are really working on new developments. Or you can be in property management, valuations, or just doing agent. So when you look at it, even when I look at my career spanning 18 years, I've changed over. So I started in property management. It was a bit boring. After some time, I moved to development, etc. So I think it's a profession that allows you to move in different segments. And when you look at the whole property market globally, it's actually moving towards more the financial as well. So I think it's an exciting profession. And it's
interesting that you're not talking about the money that you guys actually make. Tons of money. But we'll get into that. We'll get into the nitty-gritties and understanding the industry even more. But Vincent, we'll give you a few minutes to just talk about your campaign and what you guys are doing. And we'll take it from there.
Great. Yeah, I'm Vincent. I'm from Visual Point Creative Group. We are a corporate communications company doing the whole 360 degrees of corporate comms, from advertising, public relations, reputation management, strategy, digital strategy. So we work with big corporates, listed on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, and we started to delve into regional business as well. With Visa, for example, it's this is part of a regional campaign that we are working on. We've been working regionally as well with Nestle. We've also been working with Cadbury in the region. So yeah, basically we just picking up from where we were last week. This is our second week of the campaign, and we have been doing bank visits. So we have set up camp at banks, giving support to banks to onboard clients on Visa and to explain the Visa card, how it works, how helpful it is. But very, very interestingly, I think we have partnered with Munch and Sip. It's a big event that happens in Blawayo, where basically it's about munching and sipping. It's about food and drink. And Visa is one of the key partners in Munch and Sip this year, starting on the 23rd of this month. And we will be there. The whole idea is just to demystify Visa. It's no longer just about complicated financial inclusion. It's about a lifestyle. So hence we are now working with Munch and Sip and trying to drive home this point that, you know, having a Visa card should be a lifestyle.
We promised 100 retweets. We managed more than 300 retweets on Twitter.
We are not going to revise the invoice now. But believe me, it's amazing. It's amazing. In fact, your initial tweet just put everything into perspective. And how much did we have? Last time I checked, we were 19,800 views.
Yeah.
Yes, and those are huge interactions. You rarely get those numbers unless if you're talking about, you know, silly stuff and politics. But, you know, talking business, you really get...
Or Winky D.
Yeah.
No, Winky D is a cool guy. I mean, what's wrong with you? I like Winky D. I'm over 40. But the thing is, I think when you're talking about business, you really hit those numbers. And I'm so glad that, you know, this platform is given this campaign legs. And I think we can only grow from there.
Okay, no, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And what are we drinking? I'm having a latte. And Gibson?
A Coke today.
Okay, fantastic.
I'll switch over later. Eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you usually drink?
Bit of whiskey water.
Oh,
Yeah,
all right.
I'll share this one with Vince.
Okay, fantastic.
I'm having tea, but
Have a bottle here.
I'm tempted. We need someone to open the bottle.
Well, that will happen when referral comes to set later on.
Okay.
And Lavin, you have a lovely glass there.
It's sweet red wine.
Ah, fantastic. Lovely. And online we have George, again in Nairobi.
Hi.
Yeah. What are you drinking? And tell us a bit about the weather in Nairobi.
I think I've found the secret of East Africa, Tinashe, and
Please don't share it online. Keep it to yourself.
yeah, I'm enjoying myself in Nairobi, drinking the toki from Suntory, the House of Suntory, which is a Japanese house. They make whiskies, which they interestingly label as Scotch. They make it in the traditional
Japanese make whiskey.
This particular house has.
Japanese.
I beg your pardon?
Japanese make whiskey.
Yes.
Okay.
A little known fact. The House of Suntory has been doing it since 1923, actually.
Oh, wow.
And Japan is a major producer of whiskey now in the world. We've had a couple of Suntories on the show, but I don't think we've had a Toki yet. I think we've had a Hibiki and another one. It's the newest kid in their stable. I quite like it. It's a bit woody, peaty, but sweet at the same time. And Vince will be pleased to know that I spent Easter in Joburg with family and friends, and on my way back to Nairobi, I discovered that my prepaid Visa card still had a bit of value on it, which
And you bought a whiskey.
I put to very
Interesting. Yeah.
Good.
I have two prepaid cards, one for personal and one for business. I also discovered that I perhaps have a little bit more on my business card. I thought So you'll be seeing some other things that I bought with my other Visa prepaid over the next couple of weeks.
Well, there you go. Visa actually works.
It actually works.
Yeah.
And it's good that you trust Visa.
All right, thank you very much. So this is the end of our first segment, and in the second segment, we'll invite our resident 6-year-old, and he'll tell us a little more about whiskey and a little more about property management. Join us in the second segment. Welcome back, and welcome back to the resident toddler.
Well,
what are you
toddlers,
drinking today?
I've been downgraded from 6-year-old to toddler. By the end of the season, I'll be an infant.
Benjamin Barton.
No.
Have you watched the movie?
Yes, I watched the movie. It's a very good movie, by
It's
the way.
one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah. No, I'm good. I'm wearing a different color thanks to Mtengiwedu Visa. Looking dapper.
I must say, I love it. It actually feels good on the skin as well. And I'm not just saying it.
So
Thank you very much for the cake.
yeah, I just thought that your side of the table
Kind enough.
is very boring all the time.
Smells right.
Yeah.
Guys drinking
Carrot cake and cheesecake.
Yeah.
All at once. Lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So for once, there's something interesting happening in the Teetotalers corner.
Awesome.
So maybe your
Can we
fans.
actually can we actually get down to business, gentlemen?
What's your problem?
T-shirts.
Two more fads, I'm thinking. He was kind enough to actually buy some cake for us. So, yeah, we're going to enjoy it. But thank you very much. Back to the show. Like we said, we're going to talk about property, the full gamut, from residential to office, tenancy, everything around it. But maybe to start off with, I thought George put up a very philosophical question, which I think that we'll have some great debate on. And I want to read it out as clearly as he wrote it out, which is it desirable for everybody to own a house? Maybe we can start with you, Gibson. What do you think? Is it desirable for everybody to own a house?
It's a very good question to ask. Many years ago, a guy called Mark Twain said, buy land, they are not making any more of it. And it appears Zimbabweans are really listening to these words of advice. Everyone is looking for land, they want to buy a stand and build on their own. But I think, to be honest, the market doesn't really work in a way that everyone has a house. When you look at mature property markets across the globe, there are institutional residential property investors. So what they do is they partner with the local authorities, build houses. In most cases, these are insurance companies and pension funds, which are the biggest saving industry in the world across the globe. So they own these houses on a large scale, and then they list them out to the market.
Okay.
So what it does is, when you look at mobility across the globe in terms of the modern worker, you don't want to work the rest of your life in Harare. So once you own a house in Harare, in a way, when you make a decision to go to Joburg, to Cape Town, to work there, Bulawayo, etc., you are thinking, but my house is here. But if you are leasing, you are very flexible. You can move across the globe and pay your rent house. And you are not putting a lot of money in brick and mortar as a house. I think the reason, so one of the reasons people in Zimbabwe generally want to buy houses, own a house, is because we lack institutional house owners. And when you look backwards, early independence, the residential rent regulations are very much onerous on the property owners. It's very rare to go to the rent board with a tenant who is not paying rent for the past 12 months and win the case. In most cases, the rent board will actually backdate a rent order to 12 months or even more and fix the rent for another 3 years going forward. So what has then happened from 1980 coming to 90s is most institutional residential property owners, they've sold off. I'll give an example of Zesa. They used to be one of the biggest residential property owners. But they progressively they've sold off, and they are very active in developing shopping malls. You look at Marandra; they're doing a very great project there. So that's one reason. The other reason.
So just on that, because I think that's an economic reason, and I'm going to try and explain it from an economic perspective. But I want you to come back and whether you agree or disagree. Yeah. So in my economic mind, this is what you're saying. You're saying that when you have lots of institutions, what tends to happen is their rate of return is much lower than individuals. Yes. So if the rate of return is much lower, it means that tenancy rates and whatever are much lower. So it's easier to rent.
Exactly.
And cheaper to rent if the property is actually owned by institutions.
Exactly.
Whereas the reverse happens when it's now individuals owning or building, then it's actually much easier to build than it is.
There's a joke to say when a property owner, an individual, they get a school fees increase from their school. The first thing they do is to call you and say, manangu rent yakwira by so much. So when you are renting from an institution, you know that you have security of tenure. Yes. They will never check you out because they are Muzukur from Kumsha wants to come in and stay in that house. And you agree a rent on a 12-month or even 2 years basis.
Yes.
So there's a lot of security of tenure embedded as compared to renting from an individual.
Okay. So perhaps I can that brings up a question in my mind in terms of the system of land tenure, because in some jurisdictions you have freehold title, which is distinct from leasehold title, and and in a market like the UK, for example, they have really long leases, whereas in Zimbabwe, for residential property at least, you just have title and you don't have this phenomenon of leasehold title. So which system do you think is better from your perspective as a property expert?
I normally joke with my students.
Sorry, a precursor question to that, Mufaro. Is there any good reason why we don't have leasehold title?
Why we haven't separated freehold from leasehold?
Is it a law? Is it we just don't like it? We just don't like it? What's the reason?
Okay, so it's really what we've chosen to do in terms of property law. But when you look at it, like you say in the UK, so in the UK, the history of it is the Queen owned all the land, and she would then lease it out to people. It was agriculture economy then, so people were paying what they called a peppercorn rental. Peppercorn is like when you harvest your pepper, you give a basket of pepper to the Queen. So that's where the name peppercorn came from. But what it does is, which is a leasehold, it enables intergenerational transfer of property. I normally joke with my students that use it to say, if you have dreams of living in Mount Pleasant, someone has to sell so that you can buy. But as it stands now, if someone is not going to sell, you are forever not going to stay within Mount Pleasant. This is freehold. So freehold is a very big stumbling block. We see it in the city center as well, downtown. The people who are there, who are the pioneers of traders in this country, mainly Indians, they don't want to sell those properties. They are run down. It's time for other new investors to come in, but because it's all freehold, it's difficult to also go into that market as well. So the leasehold, I've said,
are you saying they're not interested in money?
They use emotional value, not market value. So properties, ideally, they trade at market value.
Maybe Lavin can come in. What's emotional value and what's market value?
I can say emotional value is more of a sentimental.
Exactly.
It came from my grandfather.
Yeah.
It came to me, and we all know how Indians operate. It's a closed community. Yeah. So it's like the world has to go round within that community. It cannot go out. You can, realistically, you cannot get a property in Ridgeview, in Belvedere, that area. It's an Indian community. It's a closed community. It's very difficult to get.
It's freehold.
But if you think about it, there's just so much land. You can always start your own Ridgeview. You can always start your own CBD.
Not in Harare. We don't have land in Harare.
Okay. Explain that further.
We don't have land anymore. In Harare, there's no land. It's now going out. That's why you have Senton, you have Fairview, but if you look at the paperwork there, it's under Rimba Council.
Okay.
It's not Harare.
But why would you have a problem with that? If the city is actually expanding, that's not a problem?
So we still have the issue of the regulations.
Okay.
Because that area is under rural district.
So it falls under the rules of a rural district
of the
and
rural
not of a
district,
city
not
center.
of the city, not of the city council.
All right.
So
okay.
those are the issues that come into.
That's an important thing, because I know this is something that you're passionate about council laws, bylaws, and everything around that. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah.
Because from what I'm hearing, we should have just expanded the city, and it wouldn't be a problem. But were it not for our laws and bylaws,
So just to go back to where she's saying, where you are saying we have a lot of land. That land has no bulk infrastructure, so there are no roads there. There's no sewer. There's no water. So I think for the last 20 years, the city has not invested in terms of supporting the lateral development of the city.
Okay.
What they've been very quick to do is to say, this one you can develop there. But when you then check, there are no services. And what the city has been doing, which is very unfortunate, is then to say the developer, you do your own sewer, you do your own water. And it's unfair. Why? Because, when I develop a suburb, I'm creating a market for the city. They are going to charge taxes, municipal rates, for infinity. So they are then they should be able to recover their money for bulk infrastructure from there.
Yes.
So what developers are now doing is they accept grudgingly to do everything. They try and pass all that cost on-site and off-site to the buyer. It will not happen because affordability doesn't chase cost.
Yeah.
Affordability is our salaries, and we all know
it's
the
elastic.
numbers. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's important. So what we then find is that within the city center, the prices are now increasing. So within your Mount Pleasant, Avondale, everywhere around convenient stores or whatever, we've seen the prices. Is that the reason? Because there's so much demand for serviced land, whereas going beyond that, it's not serviced.
Is the demand.
It's the demand.
So that demand that you see it's piling on, but supply is near static. So economics, demand, supply. So supply is very much constrained. You look around the northern suburb, there isn't so much that has happened in the past 20 years, but demand has been piling. So when you look at the price going up, it's not even any fundamental. It's not like our salaries are going up.
Yeah.
There's piling demand, zero supply. So the price will then shoot.
Yeah.
But Gibson, I want to push back there, right?
Yeah.
So over the past few weeks, I spent time in Nairobi and in Joburg, where they've got the same issues, but you've seen the market responding by densifying. So your average low-density neighborhood in Nairobi, like Wastelands, where I stay, all the houses have been knocked down and have been replaced by high-rise apartment buildings. You don't see that in Harare. You see that a little bit in Joburg, in places like Rosebank.
No, he's actually saying it's inevitable.
As I say, we're seeing it in Nairobi. But in Harare, the best you'll see is somebody building 10 townhouses on an acre.
Yeah.
So it's inevitable. It's happening.
So to me, it's not very much what you're saying.
Yeah, I think, George, what I would say is when you look at Nairobi, like you say in Johannesburg, for that to happen, it's well coordinated in terms of town planning. So when you densify, the local authorities to come, before you even do that, so when they put new regulations to say they want to densify, they are changing the potential of what you can do on your stand, on your 1 acre to maybe 4 units. Just by doing that, they've created value on your property. They then tax you. They charge you for that value. Okay. So it's a before and after valuation. Before we gazette, this stand can do ABC more, they have a valuation. So they tax you on the difference. That money, they then deploy it towards building infrastructure, widening roads, putting more water to support the densification. So this has been happening in Harare. We have seen a lot of 1 acre stands being subdivided into 6 units. But when you look at the city of Harare investing more, they're not doing it. In fact, city of Harare is not even charging people for change of use. Because if you change a residential use from 1 unit to a multi-story, they've created value for the owner. There's going to be an incremental value. They can tax up to 30% of that value. Yes. Use that money to then build infrastructure. So this is quite happening in South Africa and also in Nairobi, like you say. So the densification is more coordinated, sustainable going forward. No one knows how much more 6 houses on 1 acre can carry, say in Mount Pleasant. So all of us will do it at some point.
Yes.
But the carrying capacity of the infrastructure will give.
Yeah, it will give, because this is where the situation is. We had one.
I'm going to put back a little bit.
Just wait, George. Just wait. Lovelina's got a point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll come to you.
We've got one house on an acre. They've got the reticulation, the sewer, right? It's for one house.
Yeah.
Now then they change it, and it's now occupying 8 houses.
Yeah.
But they don't change the system.
Yeah.
The system is still for one, but
Yeah.
now we've got 8.
Yeah.
Can you not have septic tanks rather than
No,
using the
septic
the solar?
tanks are only supposed to go on 1,000 square meters.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
most of these subdivisions,
They're less
they are
than
like
1,000,
less than 1,000.
600.
They're like,
Okay.
600 is
Yeah.
big. There's some that are
So
400.
there's a minimum distance we should have between your borehole and your septic
And your
tank.
septic tank.
So the most
wonder why.
So the regulation said the minimum you can have on-site sewer is 1,200,
Okay.
and it's logical.
Okay, George, you can come in. You had something to say?
No, I want to push back at Gibson. Thank you, Tinashe.
Okay.
Because I think you guys are being too nice to me. You're letting him get off easily there. And he's wearing bad whisk. Gibson,
They've taken a lot of whisk.
about 10 years ago, you guys did 21 Natal
Yes.
in Avondale.
Yes.
You guys bought a residential property in Avondale
Yes.
and you built an office block.
Which is quite nice. We must give him kudos
Yeah,
for that.
Question is, number one, why did you end the 2 stories? It could have been a 5 or 6 story office block. Question number 2, why haven't you and your peers in the industry done more of it? I don't think, looking at what I see around me in Nairobi, I don't think we should be talking about dividing it into 6 plots. I don't think we should be even talking about 10 or 12. Here they're putting 80, 100 units on a 1 acre plot. And it's going up to 7, 8 floors.
George, did you? It sounds like you didn't hear what Gibson said.
But I can still address that query as well. I think it's a good question.
No, I heard what he said. He's blaming City of Harare. But
No, he's saying you need to increase the capacity, right? If you've got a lot of these, if the Nairobi City Council is increasing the infrastructure around it, then it's easier for developers to actually build 6, 7 floors. It's actually cheaper for them. But if the infrastructure cannot support it and the council is relying on developers to develop that infrastructure, it just becomes very expensive. That's why they will just build 2 floors and not more.
Not just that.
So just to add to that, even if developers are willing, imagine Natal, it's various, maybe over 100 owners. How can we coordinate all ourselves and say, guys, let's put a new sewer line? So it needs one headmaster with the city. So I'm not really blaming City of Harare. It may sound like I am, but as a company where kids...
No, we are. Actually, I agree with you. Let's blame City Council.
Yeah.
Because, you know, from an economic perspective, and that's why I haven't been disagreeing with you, because my mind was already racing. Because you say something that's incredibly powerful. If the council wants to increase rates and wants to increase the money that it's actually getting from ratepayers, they need to just invest in the infrastructure. Because if they invest in the infrastructure, then developers are going to come in and it's going to be in Nairobi or Johannesburg.
Yeah.
So the question I had for you, maybe it will also in tandem with what George is saying, is what comes first? Is it the demand where we see prices going up, or is the city fathers coming in and saying, okay, let's increase the infrastructure and hope and pray that the developers are going to come in? And that's where George is now blaming you guys. And he's saying, will it be true that if the city fathers increase the infrastructure, are you guys going to come and play ball?
Yeah. You know, you've said a lot of things that I'm trying to cover them. But before I come to you, I want to go back to George.
So before you come in,
Yeah.
you're going to wish you had opened your whiskey just now, Gibson.
I hope someone is opening for me.
See,
Should I get you a glass?
Sure.
regulation leading innovation. Everywhere else, do we not see successful industries innovating first and regulators catching up?
So I think I'm going to defend Gibson here.
Let him respond.
No.
Yeah, let him respond.
I suspect that our guest is going to be quite polite in talking about the city of Harare, and so I don't have that constraint. Okay, and if you actually and you've lived in Harare for a long time, so you know, you can relate to what I'm saying to you. I mean, when we think about the city of Harare as an administration that's running a city, it is failing on an epic scale. So this idea, you know, so the fact that Mash Holdings was able to actually build that, you know, buy a house on Natal and build a property that actually is functional is kudos to them. It is no thanks to the city of Harare. You know, this narrative where you're comparing the ease of doing business from a property development perspective in Harare to Johannesburg and Nairobi is just, you know, it's ridiculous. You know, we do not have.
Let
okay,
Gibson
I can also come in there.
Yeah, please.
George, do you know that you cannot build cluster houses where there is no sewer? There's no sewer system.
It's not a rhetorical question, George. It's a direct question.
Do you know that? So, is it the problem of the developer or is the council in this case?
Yeah.
Because the council would have realized that there's a high demand, right? And they should then have increased or changed their infrastructure in order for them to accommodate the developer. So now what has happened is now we have the biodigest systems that are coming into place. Why? Because the city council has failed.
Yeah. So let me just come and attend to George's query about Natal, 21 Natal. I like it that you already know 21 Natal, we also bought 9 Natal. So in 2015 May, City of Harare gazetted a local plan. They changed the use of Avondale, the whole of Avondale. So if you own a house in Avondale now, and you feel the cost is, the value is 300, maybe it's more. Because all the houses in Avondale now, they have commercial rights. So what March did was in response to that. But when you look at local plan number 39, which is the local authority that enabled March to do that, it then regulates you in terms of number of floors. So what is permitted in Natal, that whole Avondale area, is ground plus 2. So what we actually did is in line with the City of Harare issues. But I don't want to seem like I'm blaming City of Harare. What it does is, because when you develop office space, you have to provide for cars. Those stands, on average, they are an acre, 3,500 to 1 acre. If you then want to provide enough parking, you may have to do a basement in that area. Those soils are very much black, so going down is more expensive to build those basements as well. So what we did was in line with the local plan, what is permitted there. The thinking of City of Harare at that point, and this has been their thinking in terms of town planning, they say we don't want other developments out of the CBD to compete with the CBD. So in their thinking, they think out of Harare, office parks should be smaller in size. And that thinking, when you look at it, is motivated by centuries ago town planning thinking. And those town planning thinking were giving a lot of prominence on the CBD. But the CBD was like that because, you know, in 90s, the postman used to deliver 100 letters. So the more close you are together, the more letters they can deliver. So that's why businesses were coming together in the CBD. But when you look at ICTs when they came, they disrupted the whole thinking of economies of agglomeration. Now you can send an email before the messenger arrives, the email has reached this place. So that whole thinking of CBD, economies of agglomeration, has really been disrupted.
So back to the council. There's a question I have for you.
Yeah.
Are their policies driven by what they think, or are they also driven by residents? So if we as residents decide that actually it shouldn't be 2 floors, it should be a multi-story building, what's to stop us? Because we vote the councillors, we vote for the mayor, and we are the residents that should actually be driving the laws and the bylaws.
Okay, so I should say the City of Harare,
And we pay the rents.
their biggest department maybe should be research department. So they should be proactive in terms of researching what are the needs, where do people want to do, what do they want to do in the city center. So they then become proactive than reactive.
Okay.
You know, when City of Harare changed the use of Avondale, people had already started using the houses for offices, even when they knew that it was not permitted. What City of Harare started by doing in 2013, 2014, they started sending bills to those houses, which are commercial bills.
All right.
And not residential. So residential rates and commercial, they are totally different.
Different.
So people queried, but these rates are way huge. City of Harare said, we know that you're using these houses as offices. So people said, but you are not, it's not permitted. So they were also playing into their stringent conditions which were not talking to the current needs. So what should really happen is proactiveness, where the city works ahead of the needs of the market. At the moment, they are reacting.
Lovely. What could we as residents do?
So
We'll come to you, George. Just
Towards the change of use.
a change of use and ensuring that the developers actually come on board and we have more stock of clusters or houses in our neighborhoods.
I personally think that we don't have platforms that actually allow us to discuss these issues when it comes to council. We've got plenty councillors that are around, but are they in touch with the residents? In order for them to know exactly what the residents want and what they should do. Like Gibson rightfully said, that the research department should be very proactive. But are they being proactive? Why do we need councillors? They are not really addressing the issues of residents.
Shumba, would pension funds, everything that these guys have said, would pension funds invest in property development?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, pension funds are already
Sorry,
invested.
Tinashe, can I come in before we move away from
Sure.
council and regulation?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a question for Gibson and Lavin. Because I really want to come back to who should be driving the reform. Again, when we look at other industries, I look at banking where I've worked for a long time.
Are you now identifying as a banker again?
Central bank to update regulations. We go to the regulator and say, we've got this thing that we want to do. It's not in line with your regulations. And we put pressure for the regulations to change. So my question, Gibson, is there a forum that you guys as developers, I mean, there's only 3 or 4 of you that have the biggest stakes in the city, are working with City of Harare to modernize the city? Or are we all sitting back and expecting councillors who, and it's not my words, it's Mchade Masunda's words, when he was the mayor, are we waiting for councillors who don't have 5 O-levels?
Yeah. Okay, so George, that's a very good question. So I must mention that there is an organization called Property Owners Association of Zimbabwe. Really, we are trying to mimic what SAPOA, South Africa Property Owners Association, does. In South Africa, that association is very big, it's very vocal, it's respected, it's consulted. We launched Property Owners Association in 2015. Like you say, it's about 6-10 members who are very big and respectable. We have meetings. Unfortunately, we normally have meetings when there's a big issue facing everyone. 2 weeks ago, we met because suddenly Zesa sent everyone USD bills, and there was a call for a meeting. Everyone came and So yes. To be fair and honest, this issue is very much worn on by City of Harare. We had a joint presentation with City of Harare last year at Renewal, which is one of the biggest property conference. I'm very happy that my good friend at City of Harare, the director of work, attended. In fact, I had to drag him to attend, and he had to answer a lot of questions in that session. So I think City of Harare is aware. With all due respect, I think it's really about focusing on the correct things. It's said that it's as if we want things to stop working so that we start attending to them. That's what I see from the engagement with the City of Harare. At some point, the city said, we're very happy to work with you, property owners of Zimbabwe. Are you able, we want to do a research. They did a budget, it was a 1-pager. They put a very frightening number on that budget. Everyone said, no, it doesn't make sense. You don't want to buy a laptop, cars to do a research of what people now want the CBD to look like. We then suggested that maybe the city should come up with a separate board so that the monies don't go within City of Harare. Come up with a board which has City of Harare and other experts in town planning in this country. And this board is reporting to the city, but doing all this work that needs to be done. So we were stuck there because the city wanted this money to come to them. but I think there were concerns. So I think as an industry, we are not tiring. We are still trying to push to ensure that we resolve all these issues. But I must say, like you say, do we wait for regulations to change or we move ahead of them? I think there have been attempts to move ahead. But typical corporate property companies, because of governance, they may have limitation to do things that they know that these things are not permitted. If you look around, I'm happy in Nairobi. In terms of town planning, in Nairobi, their town planning started off very poor. They were developing and regularized later. It's a very key case study. So for them, they developed faster in Nairobi. But when you look at the roads, you are there, George, you can see that some of the roads were not properly planned. But so there are two ways of, do you plan and implement, or you do and regularize? So the Nairobi case study is to say, maybe you move faster if you do. It's called muddling through. You do and regularize later. But I think as Zimbabweans, we have really been very much couched to follow the regulations, especially in as far as development is concerned. I think part of it is to say, to build a house is a lot of money, or a commercial building. You don't want to do it outside of the confines of the regulations because the cost that you may incur is too huge, especially if it's a corporate.
And before we move on, I really want to wag my finger at George for being the pot that calls the kettle black. Because if we, as a banker, right, if you know former. Okay, now you're a former banker. The bankers were very quiet during one-to-one Geje. They were not telling their depositors that, you know what, your money is losing value. It's not clever to keep bank balances in Zim dollars. In fact, I would make the case that
that's a very good point,
property developers as an industry have been much more honest
and proactive
with their customers and with their regulators than bankers.
Wow.
Well, on that note, George, on that interesting note, join us again in the third and final segment. As you can see, it's a heated discussion, but one that we need to have. Thank you very much.
Wow.
And emotional.
Yeah.
But I think it speaks to the nature of this because it's something that's actually close to our hearts and close to everybody. I mean, everybody's thinking about it. Yeah. So we need to come up with the solutions, and that's why you guys are here, and that's why we're discussing this. So now I want us to focus on the CBD because that's again another topical issue. And just to give color, we have low occupancy. With all these buildings, low occupancy, it's mostly for office, and the corporates have left the CBD and have gone elsewhere. Avondale being a very good example. But what can we do? We can't allow it to just die. We certainly need to do something. You know, from the time I came back to Zimbabwe, I worked in the CBD. I actually love the CBD and I love the city. I actually don't understand why people move out of the city. There's just something, there's a mood and there's an energy around the city center. That's number one. But also it then just allows you to actually interact with the greater society. You sort of understand the Zimbabwean economy when you're in the CBD than when you're at Sem Levy. And it's usually the people who are under Mirage when they're at Sem Levy who then think that the economy is firing. But one needs to just walk through the city center and realize that maybe not. And that's the real economy. But what could we do? Maybe your views, Gibson, on CBD.
So I think just to paint some context before we really go to the key issues here. So what is happening to Harare CBD? It's not abnormal for a city. A city, look at it like a living organism. It goes through stages, typical product life cycle, growth, maturity, and decay. At decay, you need to put efforts to take it up. So early 80s, we were developing. So the development, the growth stage is very much, once you start it, it becomes very spontaneous, I must say. It happens on its own. So you have industry growing in the city. You have the city draws population from agriculture production into the city to work in the industries. That alone brings a lot of investment into roads, trains, water, sewer, etc. So it then grows. As it grows, it brings people within the city. That growth brings unwanted consequences, which we call urban problems. The first one, in most cases, is congestion.
Yes.
Then you have pollution. In Zimbabwe, we have pollution in various forms. Some of it is just nuisance. We have churches in the CBD singing the whole day. You are trying to work on something, so it just doesn't work. You have vendor menace in the city as well, etc. So then after that, what normally then happen is, like you say, businesses start, because of congestion mainly, accessibility to workplaces becomes so difficult like it is now. Businesses start moving out to the suburban area. At that stage, the city may lose its appeal. Like what is happening now? So when you look at our CBD, it's not going through decay. It's more of urban blight. Urban blight is to say the structures is fine, like you say. So the structure of the buildings looking very good. Some of them very much modern glass buildings, the modern buildings. But attraction to business has gone down because of these urban problems. So in most cases, so growth, development, spontaneous, to then turn around that graph to point upwards again, it requires a lot of concerted effort. It doesn't happen on its own like growth. So the suburban, the office park movement that happened late 90s into 2000, when you look at it, maybe it was a strategic mistake. The new town that the government is talking about is another strategic mistake. We'll see it later. But what it does, the focus that we should be putting on the current CBD.
Remember, we've got toddlers and 6-year-olds.
Yeah.
When you say it's a strategic mistake, what do you mean? Let's not beat around the bush.
It looks good today.
He's saying it's dumb.
I wanted him to say it. I wanted him to say it.
Yeah.
In his words.
So it looks good now, but going forward we realize that the effort we are putting on the, you know when you do a new city, you need to have excess electricity, excess water, excess sewer. But when you look at the current CBD, we have deficits in all those infrastructure. So how are we going to power this, to sewer this, to water this? So I feel the effort that government is putting there should actually be put to revitalize this
current city,
because the investment is already there. There's a lot of embedded energy. It's capital.
There's capacity.
And this is all pension funds money. So instead of focusing on there, I think we should need to relook at it and say, what do we need to do?
Lavleen, what's your response to that? Especially with
I'm actually in agreement with what Gibson is saying. Efforts should actually be where investment was already done, because now you're starting something that is new, which requires more income, more finances in order for you to be able to actually build that new thing. And I don't know, for me, I actually blame the original town planning for the CBD, because I think it was more on a colonial situation.
But that's actually beautiful. I actually think the colonial architecture is actually beautiful.
Yes, but they never thought that there would be many cars in Harare. It was more like the white people are the ones that are going to own cars only, and not so many blacks are going to own cars. So it was just an era from when we started buying the Japanese used cars that when the flow of vehicles increased. So now there's a lot of congestion. I think
the city planning in the 50s had flyovers.
Yeah.
So what was supposed to happen is the city center would remain as the nucleus. But then you'll have flyovers over the city.
Yes, that's
so to actually reduce the congestion. That's
exactly like what Gibson is saying.
Yeah.
If we actually just focus on what is currently there and try to build from what's there, it's a lesser expense than starting a new thing.
So I have a slightly different perspective. I think I agree with everything that you said, except for this way you talk about where the focus should be and why. I think that the challenge really, from my perspective, is administrative, right? So the reason why, for example, Sam Levy's village functions and is clean and things work there is because it's run on a 100% commercial basis. And I think that one of the reasons why we have all these challenges in Harare and the CBD is because it's not run on a commercial basis. And I think that one of the things that we could do that would solve a lot of these problems is to actually look at the administration of the city and say, what actually needs to be in the hands of elected officials or politicians? And what can be run on a purely commercial basis?
So,
and if we actually...
Rufari, to put it succinctly, you're calling for the privatization of part of what the city actually does.
Most of what the city does.
The city council.
What? Yeah, because what he's saying, and I tend to agree, is what the movement is actually us moving from public facilities to private facilities,
In fact,
because it's dependable. You know what you're getting at same levies.
That is exactly what Same Levies has done. So their refuse, their not sewer, I think water, they've taken over. They've engaged with City of Harare and say, you know what, you're too busy with the city center. We'll do all this cleaning.
They're very polite. I don't think they said you're too
There
busy.
are other property owners. There are other property owners who have done the same to City of Harare. The city have said, no, we will remain providing you with services. The service never come, unfortunately. So I do agree. But just to go on parking, so those pioneers, the pioneers, when they designed the city, they designed for the current need. It's really up to us. If you look at Joburg, what they've done, they've converted 3 floors in a building to parking. So we have to look at that as well. They've allowed certain zones for precincts development, where they say this box, you can do ABC. In our own city, we can redevelop certain buildings in the downtown, for example, and allow more parking in those areas.
Yeah, but we have parkades in the CBD, but are they being used?
Therefore, yeah.
They are.
We are.
Okay.
We are. I think I just want to go down this rabbit hole that Rufaro introduced, because I think that is quite fundamental to a discussion, is how do we convince council to privatize most of what they're doing, especially with the CBD? Because if the CBD was now managed by the players and they could take the role that Sem Levy is taking in Sem Levy, we could do it with the city center. I'll tell you my interest in the city center. I think that the buildings are architecturally beautiful. I think that the city is one of the most beautiful cities. When you look at it from above, it's one of the most beautiful cities you will find anywhere in the world. But the problem are the facilities and everything around what the city is supposed to provide. So that's why people will end up staying in, frankly, I believe, deplorable office parks outside of the CBD, purely because of convenience, but not because it's actually a good working space. I don't think so. But I think that if we privatize the CBD, there might be something there. What do you think?
So I totally do agree. You see, what you privatize.
Can I come in tonight?
Okay.
I think what we have is in Harare CBD and Bulawayo CBD and maybe Gweru and Mutare as well, is typically what economists call the tragedy of the commons.
Yeah.
Which is where there is a problem that affects everybody, but nobody wants to take the initiative to fix it because the costs to the person fixing it is disproportionately great.
Yeah.
Gibson, I'm glad you're now having your visit because when we talk about Harare CBD, and Ranga is going to be upset, but I'll mention companies, right? There's you guys, MASH, there's Old Mutual, there's Pearl Properties or First Mutual Properties, and that's it.
Yeah.
You guys own most of the CBD. If you guys decided that you wanted to privatize rubbish collection in your part of the CBD, and MASH owns everything. If you decided to do that,
Sadly, you're breaking up.
You're breaking up, George. Yeah. But maybe Gibson can reply.
I don't understand why.
So I like what you say about the tragedy of the commons. So add to that the prisoner's dilemma. So I think prisoner's dilemma is you are arrested, so you are separated in
There's
two
a
rooms.
disincentive.
Exactly. So when you want to take the leadership, there are some of the property companies have said there are some who wanted to take a very robust move, but you are sort of separated and you are treated differently, and the incentives are given to these ones who are looked at as a passive. So I think we need to break those chains of prisoner's dilemma and tragedy of the commons. Normally it works when you have an association that is recognized and strong as well. So I think there are efforts to try and work on that. But I totally agree. Once you privatize most of these things like rubbish collection, etc., the operator is working for a profit. And you see, we don't like capitalism, but I really think it works. We work for a profit. So I think at some point we need to look at it in that regard.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge we have, I'm not blaming Sito Ferrari, is they are so much fixated on their traditional revenue lines. So when you have that engagement, they actually, so the guy will say, they will check with the accountant, how much are we getting on a monthly basis from revenue? And what they are looking at is not cash flow, it's sales, what they've charged. In most cases, no one is paying it. So they are told so much, they say, no, we can't let this go. But I think modern cities have really moved to modern revenue lines where you are just supervising. You could actually get more money because your cost is low as well. So it's revenue and cost. And I think we are getting there. There was an interesting article in the newspaper where Sito Ferrari is partnering with Bayern Munich as the city. And I hope they will learn these modern trends as well. But I totally agree that once you privatize some of these services, it removes the burden on Sito Ferrari. It's not that revenue, but also the burden of managing it as well.
Lavin, could tenants push, so the CBD tenants, what could we do? Because I'm a tenant within the CBD. What could we do to actually get this process started?
The Property Owners Association is already working on something. So I think that involves the residents as it stands. But I think where the other challenge comes in is our city council always say they also have a higher office that they have to report to. Okay. If you saw, there's an article, a video that went around where the mayor was talking about the servicing of roads, where Zinara is collecting, is it 62 million? And they only get 2 million. So they also, we are blaming them.
Then the solution is privatized.
So the solution is privatized.
But George,
yes.
But
to be fair to George, he raises a valid point, and funny enough, sometime today I was looking at a video. Arnold Schwarzenegger was fixing a portal somewhere in San Francisco because they'd given up on the city council doing it, and people had been complaining about it for weeks. And he said, you know what do you need to fix the portal? Let's just fix it. And I've raised this question before, actually, and I was advised, and I'm grateful that we have experts in the bar tonight, that if you got together as people living in a close, for example, and you said, you know what, the lighting, which is owned by the city, is not working, how much does it actually cost to fix this?
By law, it's illegal for you to
fix. Even if you have capacity, as the people living in that close, that's illegal. That's where I was going.
It's actually even illegal to fix a portal.
And that's the point that I wanted to make.
But now the city is ignoring it, to be honest, to be fair on him.
Yeah.
The city is illegal in law, but people are actually doing it. You've seen the boys fixing the road. Yeah. It's illegal for them to do that.
But they're not really fixing. They're not really fixing the road. What I'm saying is, if people actually have title to property in the nicer parts of Harare, are living on a horrible potholed road, and they have the capacity to get together and say, actually, let's get somebody who's knowledgeable about fixing roads. What do we need to do to fix our road? And they were willing to put the money together and do it. They can't. They need the city's permission. And the city is not interested in giving people licenses to fix these things.
Gibson talked about the council being the supervisor. They can just be supervisors in all this. Residents come together. They decide we want to fix our road. The council knows they have the expertise. They give the residents, this is the quotation, ZESA is doing it, right? Yeah. Where they say the transformer has been stolen. Yeah. Residents come together, they buy a transformer. They get a quote from ZESA, then they buy a transformer. So what's stopping the council from giving the residents that want to fix their road, right? And then they give the expertise because they know better.
Okay,
and
you bring out a very critical issue, which leads us to one of the important things that we must actually discuss, which are illegal structures. Because what you guys are talking about, buccaneering, where we take the law into our own hands, and then the council comes after, and says, well, no, that's actually an illegal structure and we're going to destroy it.
We want our
what do you
potholes
think?
back.
Redig it.
Come on,
George,
be honest.
yeah, George, go ahead.
There's a burst sewer in front of ZP Life Towers. He's going to fix it. He's not going to wait for City of Harare.
Yeah.
The problem of illegal structures, you know, Sam Levy, I think at some point was an illegal structure,
it was.
but when you have money, you can buy your way out of a problem. The problem with illegal structures happen in illegal settlements, or what they term illegal settlements, where the poor don't have the wherewithal or the power to fight the council or to negotiate with the council. So I want to hear your thoughts and views on illegal structures and what do we need to do? Because clearly the council is not proactive enough. And if we are being active citizen, we now start building these illegal structures. And illegal doesn't mean it's not suitable for you. It just means that it's not according to the law.
Yeah.
How do we solve this conundrum?
So to be honest, I think Zimbabwe has really been known for good town planning standards. We borrowed this from the British. The first time I visited Malawi, that was 2012. I got in the mid CBD of Lilongwe. Then as the guy was driving, where's the city center? This was Robert Mugabe Road. He said, "Yeah, we are there." I couldn't feel like I was in the city center, you know. So my view around illegal structures, to be honest and fair, is I think we need to maintain those town planning standards. To be honest, most of all these issues we are having is urban poverty. So what should happen is urban economic growth should grow ahead of urbanization. The biggest, all these things we are discussing here are symptoms of the real issue. The real issue is our urban economy has not grown in tandem with urbanization. Urbanization is growth in urban population.
Yeah.
So this is the real issue. And when
People
you
are
look
running
further,
away from the rural areas.
exactly, yeah. But now fertility rate is higher than rural to urban migration based on the latest numbers. So we are growing, but our urban economy is not growing. When you then check the key departments at the City of Harare, you would imagine they should have an economic department, which is very good, promoting City of Harare. It's a global fight to bring business to Harare.
Yes.
You don't hear a lot of that happening. So what we need to do is to grow the urban cake.
Okay.
Now, what
that's
is
interesting.
politely omitted is that for the last 2 decades, we've had appalling city leadership.
Well, I think it's beyond that. What he's actually saying is it's a change in mindset. Because what he's saying is, when was the last time we actually had the city fathers calling out for business to actually come to the CBD and saying
a
this is the
leadership-
incentive that we're actually
So
gonna
you're agreeing
provide."
with what I'm saying?
Well,
a leadership issue,
No,
isn't
it's, those are two different things. Because right now they're in a crisis mode, which is perfectly fine. You still need to solve the crisis. But there's a real problem where if you're not inviting, if you're not talking to your tenants within the CBD, it's always going to be very difficult. Whereas cities like Manchester, everywhere else in the
They
world,
promote business.
Chicago, they actually went out of their way where they said, you know what, these are the incentives we're going to provide for our city.
So you mentioned the UK, London. In London, they have a system to say they want to help the property owners to rehabilitate their buildings, which we can just copy and start implementing. What do? They look at the cost. So they say, if you redevelop, we'll give you a municipal rebate or holiday for 3 years. What they are trying to do is they are reducing your cost of doing it. They also look at the income side. Tenants occupying rehabilitated buildings will not pay tax to Zimbra. So they are trying to look at the cost of doing it and also the income side. So by giving tenants that incentive, you then have a lot of demand for rehabilitated buildings. Those are incentives that the city
Our
can
city council,
implement.
does it have an investment and economic unit?
I think Rufaro knows.
Research and development.
Yeah.
I think we've actually been giving council a number of suggestions on what they should do. George, I want you to come in and maybe just give us a bit of color on what's actually happening in Nairobi. Just looking at the city and some of the exciting things that you're seeing there that we could potentially pick up on and implement in Harare.
Okay. I'll also just abuse that you've given me the mic a little bit and push and come back a little bit on what places like London and Joburg have done as well. Gibson, I like that you're taking the discussion there. But they also now have precinct management, and you probably know more about this than I do, but I get the sense that in certain precincts within the city, the property owners have volunteered to spend more money on social amenities. So you get certain precincts that are cleaner, where the services are better. And maybe Gibson will come in and respond to that.
Yeah.
But I'll answer to your question. What I'm seeing in Nairobi is immense densification. So right now, I'm sitting on the 10th floor in an 18-story apartment building in Westlands.
You need to work harder, George. You should be on the 18th floor.
Sorry.
So you need to work harder, George. You need to be on the 18th floor.
Not the 10th.
You're halfway there.
That's where we hang our load. That's where we hang our laundry, actually.
So you're already there anyway.
This was a residential property. It was a home, a family home. And I look around me and I see lots of buildings between 5 and 20 stories in the whole of Westland. In fact, Westland is not a residential neighborhood with family homes.
It's like Santon.
Full of high-rises, office buildings. Money is coming here, and it's densified. And, but people like myself, an expatriate who's here for a few weeks, can afford to stay in Westlands. A decade ago, I wouldn't have been here. The cost of an apartment in this sort of place would have just been completely unreachable. So that's one thing. The other thing that I've seen here is the government has borrowed immensely for infrastructure development. So, and I think somebody in the studio there touched on it, that the roads have been widened, the sewer has improved, the power has improved quite a lot. Of course, that is coming back to bite them a little bit. They've got a huge debt burden that they're struggling to service. But the infrastructure works and the money is coming in, and I think in a few years' time, the tax base will catch up with that debt burden. Yes, it probably could have been managed better, as it always could be. But it was done, and they're reaping the benefits. In terms of infrastructure development, there are probably 2 or 3 waves ahead of us. So, Tinashe, you would know Momba Road.
Yes.
Which then becomes Chiroma Road, becomes Wayaki Way, and goes out of the city on the other end. It starts at the airport and goes towards Nakuru, Naivasha area. So they're equivalent of Samora Machel. A decade ago, this was a 2-lane highway. It used to take 3 or 4 hours to get from the airport. It's now a 6-lane highway at ground level with an expressway that is suspended, which is a 4-lane highway, suspended up the 6-lane highway.
Wow.
And you pay a special toll to go on the expressway. And this has done wonders for congestion, has done wonders for the city in terms of visitors. This was just a no-go as a conference venue because your delegates spent half their lives in traffic. But now, it's absolutely delightful. Where it would have taken me 3 or 4 hours to get from my apartment to the airport 10 years ago, it now takes 15 minutes.
George, on that note, George, we have to end the show.
Okay.
Thank you.
You get the last word. You get the last word. You seem disappointed.
You was on a roll.
Yeah. Interesting stories though, eh? Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody.
And we've been trying to dualize Airport Road to Harare CBD for the last 10 years.
Just taking for
On that note, laundry on the 18th floor. Thank you very much. Maybe one day Harare will get there. But this is the sort of important questions that we are asking and the sort of discussions that we should be having with the city fathers and with everybody, the residents, everybody that's actually involved. I think it's exciting times within the property industry. To our students who watch the show, I think you've given them enough to actually want to be part of the sector. And it sounds exciting, especially with where we're going. On that note, George, thank you very much. Laundry on the 18th floor. Wonderful. We hope that one day we'll get there, Zara. These are the sort of discussions that we are hoping that you start discussing wherever you are, and we can solve our problem not just in Harare but across Zimbabwe. To our kids that actually watched the show, this was wonderful. Thank you very much for coming over. I think you've given them enough impetus to actually join the sector. It sounds like an exciting time and an exciting industry to be in. To Visa, we thank you very much for sponsoring the show. You can see the level of discussion and the level of excitement that's around. It's all thanks to you. And let's continue watching the show and let's continue promoting Visa. Otherwise, have a great weekend and
be good. If you
can't be good
at it.
it.